it's Dave from ANS, and I wanted to show you something that I observed in the last couple of days here. Looking at a Benelli M4 trigger guard versus ours, this is a new issue. Date code on this says May of 2016, and I've got pins in this thing. You can see our part and the Benelli part pinned together. So basically our pinhole relations are all the same. What I came to find as I was doing a trigger pack installation on a customer's parts, and we've got some 922R compliance aftermarket parts, and what happens with this particular hammer trigger, here we'll get some better light here, hammer trigger disconnector group. So there the gun just went bang, bolt carrier cycles back, you've still got your trigger depressed, recocking, and you can see the disconnector has caught the hook on the hammer, and now I'm slowly releasing the trigger. I didn't pull the trigger again, that just fired on release. What didn't happen is that trigger sear didn't catch the hammer sear. There, here this is again. I'm releasing the trigger, releasing, fire on release. If you do this quickly, as in just quick drop the trigger, it catches. So it's right on the edge of the sears not engaging properly. It's if you release slowly. All right, so here are these aftermarket hammer trigger disconnector. And what I was showing you earlier is the motion is as you pull the trigger, this rocks forward, your hammer goes. As the bolt carrier cycles, hammer comes back, catches on the disconnector until you release the trigger, and then it's supposed to fall onto the hammer trigger sear. So what the problem is the distance from this sear to this sear is just a little bit too big. And this is the type of thing that a gunsmith can correct, and we're going to correct it in our shop here before we send it back to the customer. And the way that you do that is you remove the disconnector and you grind it or file a tiny amount of material here, and that will effectively make the disconnector rock forward and close the gap between these 2 points. Now this is what I'm trying to illustrate here is the fact that between our aftermarket part and these aftermarket parts, there's potentially a tolerance stack up, and if you're using anything other than stock Benelli parts or stock Remington parts, you need to check this on your gun. And if it does fire on release like what I'm showing you here, you either need to correct it or you need to contact a gunsmith who knows how to correct it, depending on your skill level. Okay, so we made a little modification on that surface here and rocked the disconnector forward, and we ended up taking about 12/1000ths of an inch off of the thing. And now when you pull the trigger, release, it catches on the hammer sear. So it's dropping from the disconnector sear properly onto the hammer sear. Another thing to check on this, make sure when the trigger is pulled, you can't drop it like so. I've got the trigger pulled all the way back, and now I'm going to drop it onto the hammer. Can't drop the trigger that way either. So that problem's fixed. And again, to reiterate, if you don't know what you're doing, go see a gunsmith about this. And for that matter, this is a good check for you to perform on any aftermarket hammer trigger guard out there that you might purchase. So thanks for watching the video, and I hope you find that helpful.